assistance? Power Rangers? They've been cooked into a pizza.
Number 5. Lightspeed Rescue. Okay, from here on out, we're now getting into the section where it became super tough for me to rank the final 5 choices because all of them are so good in their own unique ways. If I'm gonna be really honest, this season ranks number 1 in my heart and was my number 1 for a while as I made my way through the franchise. But looking at things from a more objective standpoint, I can now see that the other seasons coming up technically have arguably better villains, character growth, or plotting, but nonetheless, there was something about this season that just struck the right chords with me. Unbeknownst to most people, the city of Mariner Bay was built on an ancient demon burial ground. When the demons are accidentally released from their tomb in the desert, they threaten to destroy the city. In response, a government organization called Lightspeed, headed by Captain Mitchell, recruits 4 civilians and his own daughter to defend the city as a new team of Power Rangers. Each of the 5 chosen have a special area of expertise. Carter, a firefighter, Joel, a stunt pilot, Dana, Captain Mitchell's daughter who's a paramedic, Kelsey, an extreme sports athlete, and Chad, a lifeguard who works at SeaWorld. Our heroes, everyone! Aided by a team of scientists and engineers that operate out of a secret high-tech aqua base, our heroes must now defend their hometown and find a way to seal away the demon hordes forever. Coming out right after Lost Galaxy, which acted as an epilogue of sorts to the Zordon era, Lightspeed Rescue was the first season to be its own self-contained story that had next to zero connection to anything that came before, save for the annual crossover. And after dealing with the borderline soap opera that the Zordon era became for so long, this season was a huge breath of fresh air. We're back on Earth, we finally get a new city other than Angel Grove, and rather than the standard robots or aliens, our protagonists are going up against literal demons from the depths of hell. Now that's hardcore. Admittedly, the villains themselves are your standard, I want to take over the world types, which with not much depth added to them, but they're far from boring and definitely fun to watch. Easily the most compelling arc with them is the backstory behind Captain Mitchell's long-lost son Ryan, who was taken by the demons due to a desperate literal deal with the devil his dad made to save his life during a car accident, which eventually leads to Ryan having to fight a sentient snake tattoo the demons branded him with. I just love getting to write insane-sounding sentences like that. This also leads to the debut of the first American-exclusive Titanium Ranger, and he's spliced into the plot so well, I would have never known he wasn't from the Sentai footage if I wasn't told this. But I think what made this season stand out to me the most was the Rangers themselves. Each one of them are extremely likable and get plenty of moments to shine. From Dana refusing to give up hope and trying to rescue her brother, to Chad's martial arts history and his love life with an actual mermaid, to Kelsey's adventurous go-getter positive attitude on everything, to Joel's arc of learning to tone down his huge ego, to Carter learning better ways of rescuing people and that he has a more personal connection to the Lightspeed operation than he originally thought. This whole crew just got along so well with each other, and even better, all the team members were out saving people and being heroes before they even became Rangers, which I think makes them the most empathetic out of all the Ranger teams. I love how this season put a huge emphasis on the search and rescue aspect of their jobs, with the lion's share of focus being put on the victims of the week and showing how all these giant monster attacks are actually affecting the city and the people who live in it. A subject matter that no other season has tackled this closely before or since. It's so easy to watch a rubber-suited monstrosity get vaporized in a colorful explosion for the 20th time, but this season forces you to think about all the people in the nearby vicinity who probably got hurt or died. But rest assured, this season isn't that dark. We're saving the true doom and gloom for a later entry. It's at turns silly, at turns horrific, at other turns emotional. It's an all-around fun ride that'll help you appreciate the true heroism of first responders.
Whatever it is you just said, I'm gonna make you eat your words.
Number 4. Dino Thunder. So once again, I'm doing the me thing where the widely regarded fan favorite season of a franchise doesn't claim the top spot for me. But hey, it made it to number 4, so I'm at least mostly in agreement with the majority, and as you're about to see, there's a reason this particular entry is beloved by so many. 3 high school students, a soccer player named Connor, computer expert Ethan, and budding singer Kira, are all given detention and forced to work together to help one of their teachers, Dr. Tommy Oliver, who they sometimes just call Dr. O. During their little field trip, our trio accidentally uncovers a hidden underground laboratory and become bonded to powerful objects known as Dino Gems, which also give them superpowers like sonic screams, extra strength, and super speed. Even more surprising to them, Dr. O is actually a legendary Power Ranger and has been fighting back against the machinations of the dinosauric Mesogog, who wishes to eradicate all human life and return Earth to the age of the dinosaurs. Now our young heroes must step up and become rangers themselves to help save the world. Well, let's just say you know a show is going to be good when in the first episode one of your main protagonists windmill kicks an early 2000s CGI T-Rex in the face. But in all seriousness, if the summary was any clue, one of the biggest reasons this season got so popular is that it features the return of a classic character, that being Tommy Oliver, who skyrocketed to fan favorite status back in Mighty Morphin and led the Rangers through a large chunk of the Zordon era. So bringing him back to be the mentor figure here was a genius move on the writer's part, and just a few episodes in, he gets back in the saddle and becomes the Black Dino Ranger. And while having seen all the seasons that came before certainly helps in hammering home how significant Tommy being here is, this is one time where the writers actually kept the newbies in mind and had an entire clip show episode dedicated just to reviewing the franchise up to that point. So if you choose this season as your entry point, you're gonna be just fine. But Tommy's comeback isn't the only reason to give this a watch. The plot is fairly engaging, with Mesogog being genuinely terrifying at times, and the big twist as to his true identity is truly sad, mainly for how it ties in with the eventual White Dino 6th Ranger Trent, an upcoming comic book artist which instantly made him a fave with me. But I don't want to give anything else away. And our main trio is just as interesting and get a fair amount of growth over time. They all start off being what an actual teenager with attitude would be, but slowly become better people the more they befriend each other. Ethan gradually gives computers a rest and starts socializing more. Kira remains a rock star rebel, but also slowly opens up and learns she doesn't have to go it alone, and that there are people who care about her the more she gets her music career off the ground. But the biggest change happens to Connor, who begins as a sexist jerkwad and borderline bully to anyone he deems a nerd. But as time goes on, he learns to treat others with respect, and that kindness will get him farther with people than brushing them aside. Best of all, these changes happen naturally and subtly, even in episodes that don't focus on a particular character. But make no mistake, the plots still have a lot of wackiness to them. We even get an episode fully devoted to showing off the original Sentai. And Mesogog, while unnerving, still does the stereotypical, "I'm gonna kill you if you fail me again," and then proceeds to keep his underlings around for the entire season, even though they constantly fail him. Like, bro, make do on your threats. Much like Lightspeed Rescue, this season isn't 100% perfect, but it's clear a lot of time and care was put into it, and it's a shining example of what Power Rangers should be, especially as an anniversary season. Dino Thunder, power up!
What in the world?
Number 3. RPM. What do you do when your franchise is on the brink of cancellation? Well, much like what an In Space did, you go all out and do all the deep storytelling and other things you always wanted to do but were held back on. RPM easily stands out for some of the best character work in the franchise's history, and is basically the Terminator for kids who are too young to watch the Terminator yet. Taking place in an alternate universe separate from the main Power Rangers timeline, an AI computer virus named Venjix takes over all of Earth's computers, creates an army of robot droids, and destroys or enslaves almost all of humanity. Only the city of Corinth remains, protected by an almost impenetrable force field from the toxic atmosphere of the wasteland outside. To combat Venjix, the child prodigy Dr. K creates the RPM Power Rangers, recruiting Air Force pilot Scott, hero Dino-obsessed mechanic Flynn, reform-rich socialite Summer, bumbling thief Ziggy, and the rebellious, mysterious drifter Dylan. And together this ragtag team of heroes must hold on to the hope that they can somehow find a way to destroy Venjix and rebuild the Earth from the ground up. Holy cow, is this season unlike anything else this franchise has ever produced before or since. Seriously, when you boot up episode 1, you can be forgiven for thinking you accidentally started up a PG-13 war movie, and it's not until like 20 minutes in that you finally realize this is supposed to be Power Rangers. That's how jarring it initially is. But rest assured, the fun elements this franchise is known for is still here. The writing isn't above cracking a few jokes or poking fun at Super Sentai tropes, most notably the episode where the characters take note of the explosions that go off behind them every time they morph and use that to their advantage to fight the monster of the week. Yes, that's a thing that happened. And as dark as the storyline could get here, the writing is careful to keep instilling that lingering hope that things can and will get better so as long as our heroes don't give up. And speaking of our heroes, every, and I mean every main character gets an interesting backstory and tons of development. We learn how Flynn has always dreamed of being a superhero and has been dedicated to doing the right thing no matter what. We learn how Ziggy used to work for a mob boss, how he escaped, and that he actually has a heart of gold underneath. We find out about Summer's rich upbringing and how surviving the apocalypse made her realize what's truly important in life. We follow Scott as he wrestles with the death of his brother and his attempts to make his dad proud when it's painfully clear his dad favored his brother over him. Dylan arguably is the real main character as he begins the series with partial amnesia and spends the whole season trying to recover his memories and find his long-lost sister. And of course, I ain't telling you what the big twist is, you're gonna have to watch and find out. But to balance all the gloom, we later get the pyrotechnic-loving Gold and Silver Rangers Gem and Gemma, but even then their lives living out in the waste wasn't a cakewalk either. But hands down, the most shocking, most painful, saddest story is the tale of the team's tech expert and mentor, Dr. K, a child prodigy who was locked up in a government think tank since she was a toddler and coerced into inventing and developing all manner of gadgetry and weapons for her captors. She can be a difficult character to like at first since she's 100% no-nonsense, rarely shows emotion, and keeps the teams at arm's length at first, going so far as to refer to them just by their designated colors rather than names. Don't worry, she warms up as it goes along. But when her backstory is revealed in what's easily the greatest episode of Power Rangers ever produced, it makes complete sense why she behaves the way she does. I dare not spoil anything, but let's just say that after this episode and this season, you will forever be haunted by the phrase, "I just wanted to go outside." Objectively, this is easily the best written season, bar none, but if this summary was any indication, it's also the darkest. Certain episodes can take a lot out of you, which is why we still got 2 seasons that ranked higher on the fun scale. While I highly recommend it, that all depends on what your personal taste is. If you're looking for lighthearted fun, this probably won't be for you, and be advised, this season is not the norm for Power Rangers, if the other entries on this list were a clue. But if you're curious what a young adult take on a post-apocalyptic story would be, then you will love this season. RPM, get in gear.
It's gone! Okay, I don't know, I'm thinking earthquake. When was the last time you heard of an earthquake sucking buildings and people into the sky?
Number 2. Dino Charge. Well, back to the dinosaurs again. I don't know what it is, but how did all of the dino-related seasons turn out to be such bangers? Well, whatever the magic is that the prehistoric era seems to have on Power Rangers, it worked again for what is, in my opinion anyway, the best of the dino-themed seasons. 65 million years ago, a dinosaurid alien named Keeper is pursued through the galaxy by Sledge, an intergalactic bounty hunter bent on acquiring 10 magical stones called the Energems in Keeper's care, and harnessing their powers to conquer the universe. Keeper crash lands on prehistoric Earth, entrusting the gems to many dinosaurs for safekeeping, and cripples Sledge's ship with a bomb that leaves the bounty hunter stranded in deep space. Unfortunately, Sledge's collection of asteroids held in a tractor laser beam accidentally rains down on Earth and causes the extinction of the dinosaurs. Cut to the present day, where Keeper is found by paleontologist Kendall, to which they set up a base under the Amber Beach Dinosaur Museum. They then begin a mission to find the Energems, but 5 have already been found by teenagers who use them to morph into the Dino Charge Rangers. This includes Tyler, an adventurer who's searching for his father who disappeared 10 years ago on a geological dig, Shelby, a waitress with a vast knowledge of dinosaurs, Coda, a caveman living in modern times because he found his Energem in his tribe's cave and was kept in suspended animation until the present day, Riley, a skilled swordsman, and Chase, a suave and laid-back New Zealand skater. Eventually, they're also joined by Sir Ivan, an 800-year-old knight from Xandar who also became time-displaced like Coda, Prince Philip III of Xandar, the modern-day crown prince of Ivan's home country, Xenowing, a bird-like alien who was one of Keeper's apprentices, as well as the Aqua and Purple Rangers, who I'm not going to reveal the identities of because it's a major story spoiler. With these powers, the Rangers fight against Sledge in his prison full of monsters in order to find the remaining Energems and protect Earth. Okay, for some context here, after RPM, Saban acquired the rights to Power Rangers back from Disney, and after taking a year-long break, they began what's known as the new Saban era on Nickelodeon with Samurai. And, it was not good. I'm sure it has its fans, but I, like many, was not one of them. Not helping matters was when this season was followed up by Megaforce, which was also widely regarded as being not good, and I agree. So after having sat through back-to-back seasons of stilted acting, dull as dishwater characters who went through next to no development, plots that went nowhere, and the writing capitalizing on tons of callbacks and cameos thinking that's all you need to make your season enjoyable, you can imagine how burned out I was by the end of them both. God forbid if I watched this as it was airing, because that would have meant a 4-year span of just ugh. Well, apparently the Dino Charge writers were also aware of this. I get the feeling that someone in the higher-ups was like, okay, those last 2 seasons totally sucked. We need to make sure that this next season knocks everyone's socks off, or else we're in huge trouble. If this was the case, then it's certainly shown through, because good Lord Almighty, was this season a huge breath of fresh air. Dino Charge is good. Really good. Admittedly, the general main plot is nothing overly complicated. It's basically a glorified Easter egg hunt as the heroes and villains try to get their hands on the Energems before the other side does. But after being forced to sit through all the messy family history drama in Samurai and then the non-stop over-reliance on references in Megaforce, I think it was a smart move to give us a back-to-basics kind of season. Sometimes simpler is better. So what do you do when your plot is fairly uncomplicated and basic? You make up the difference by giving the audience some of the most likable, lovable, enjoyable characters in the entire franchise, both on the hero and villain side. No joke, there was not a single boring or bad character in this entire show. And considering how huge the cast is here, clocking in at 10 Rangers and giving us the largest Ranger team in the franchise, that's an impressive feat. Keeping track of everyone in their individual arcs had to be a writing nightmare, and yet somehow nearly every person manages to get multiple moments to shine in a fair bit of development. From Sledge's hilarious romance with Poisandra, to Fury's actions that greatly affected the lives of at least 2 of the Rangers, to the eventual debut of Heckle and how cunning, terrifying, yet charming he is, and his surprising backstory that instantly made him tragic and sympathetic. We get Tyler's ongoing quest to find his missing father, Riley and Shelby trying to prove to everyone that they're more than the sum of their parts, Shelby especially taking flack from Kendall for being just a simple waitress, which leads to Kendall having to learn to treat her and the rest of her teammates better, and that these teenagers are more capable than they look. We have Chase, who starts off as a total womanizer but learns to tone down his ego. We have Xenowing and the Aqua Ranger, who, while they don't get too much screen time, they at least make a big splash in their debuts, so at least the show makes their scenes count. Can't spoil much more than that. There's Prince Philip, who has to learn the true meaning of being a hero and that throwing money at stuff won't solve all your problems. Well, except for that one episode where it totally did when he saved the museum from being shut down, but hey, good on him for donating his riches toward a good cause. And good on the writers for remembering that he's a prince who has a country to take care of and he can't just leave anytime he wants. Take note, Ninja Steel, when you got a country music star in your group, actually have there be consequences beyond just one episode. And then we have the two loves of my life, Coda and Sir Ivan. Oh my lord, my heart just goes out to these two. Both of them are so charming and kind, come from vastly different periods in history, have their own unique ways of speaking and behaving. The writing never forgets that they're men out of time, leading to tons of either funny or emotional fish out of water moments. And it's very subtle, but as time goes on, you can see a progression as these two get adjusted to our present day. Coda's broken speech patterns gradually get better. Ivan eventually understands various scientific principles he didn't before. It's clear these two were studying in their downtime, and at no point does the narrative outright tell us this. They just show it, and they trust the audience to be smart enough to pick up on it. It's attention to little details like that that make this season so special. You really get the sense there's stuff going on behind the scenes, and these people have lives outside of what the audience sees on screen. Full disclosure now, the grand finale to this season is arguably one of the weirdest of the whole franchise, with time travel logic that'll make every scientist's head explode and left fans divided. You're either gonna love or hate the ending. Me, I was fine with it, but if you wind up being in the other camp, well, I guess that's what fanfiction's for. But the road getting there is nothing short of non-stop fun. This was the Ranger team that truly felt the most like a found family to me, and hopefully you'll feel the same way. Unleash the power. Before we get to the number one pick, similar to what I did in my Precure countdown, I want to quickly break down a few of my favorite individual aspects from the franchise as a whole. Bear in mind that for each of these tier lists, I'm judging many of these just on their own, in a vacuum, without the quality of the seasons playing a factor unless otherwise noted. With that said, let's start off with top 5 favorite megazords. I say top 5 rather than 10 because I'm going to be real here. As the marathon went on, most of these giant mecha all started to blur together after a while for me. I tended to care more about the human stuff than the giant monster battles anyway. You could show me any one of their pictures, and save for some notable exceptions, I'd never be able to tell you which one came from what season. So here are those noteworthy exceptions. Number 5, we have the Jungle Pride Megazord from Jungle Fury. Typically, a Megazord is piloted by the Rangers via control panels, so it's always interesting to get ones where the Rangers have a sort of psychic link to it instead and can just perform whatever moves they need to, like the Jaegers in Pacific Rim. I also think part of the problem of why it's hard for me to recall any of the giant mecha is because a lot of the Megazords became too overtly designed after a while, with so much detail and stuff attached that they started becoming these giant colorful blobs of metal, and it's no wonder later seasons switched over to CGI, because with all that crap attached to them, it'd be near impossible for a suit actor to even move around in the thing. I say all this because not doing all that is what made me appreciate and remember this Megazord. The fact that it has a very stripped down, simple design, it's practical, easily maneuverable, and is basically a giant robot man wearing a tiger costume. You can't go wrong with that. Number 4, it's the Turbo Megazord from Turbo. I totally get why many who grew up with this franchise didn't care for Turbo when it aired, with its huge change of casting and tonal shift to mostly comedy, but I wasn't one of those people, and I mostly had a ton of fun with this season. It's one of the weaker ones for sure, but it's far from the worst, and one of my favorite aspects from it was this Megazord, if anything because of its finishing move where it slices its opponent via spinning like the Tasmanian Devil, with the kicker being that even the Rangers are being flung around in the cockpit every time they have to perform this attack, which always got a laugh out of me. How they always manage to do this without throwing up, I'll never know. Number 3, the Zeo Megazord from Zeo. Many fans consider Zeo to basically be Mighty Morphin Season 4, and I'm in full agreement, with that season feeling like an upgrade to everything that came before, and that includes the Megazord. It has a distinct Sphinx mixed with ancient samurai feel, even better when it gets an upgrade that gives it different powers depending on what helmet it's wearing, and the wings on its back giving it a very striking and majestic feel, like actual bird wings and not just airplane wings. Not much more to say here, I just really like it. Number 2, the Astro Megazord from In Space. It's a spaceship that turns into a giant robot with a sword and shield. A spaceship that turns into a giant robot that can travel through space. Need I say more? And at number 1, we have the one, the only, the original, the Dino Megazord from Mighty Morphin. You really can't get more iconic than this, and this one combines all the things I liked best in a Megazord. 5 robots that are already cool on their own, nothing beats a bunch of prehistoric animals, a combining sequence that doesn't take all day, and a sleek, simple, but awesome design. No overtly complicated transformations, no extra bells and whistles to the point of making it look like a walking Katamari ball, just a practical, easily maneuverable giant mecha with a sword that magically descends from the sky to dish out justice. It's the perfect example of how sometimes less truly is more. Next up, let's rank 10 of what I feel to be the best villains of the franchise. As I was trying to rank my favorite seasons overall, I was judging them on various factors, from rangers to villains to plot and character growth, and all of the things combined determine how good a season was for me. There were more than a few times where I felt the ranger team was subpar, but the villains were excellent, and vice versa. So just bear in mind that my rankings of the antagonists here are just the characters mostly on their own, and while they played an important part in how I rank the seasons, it wasn't the only part. Bottom line, you're going to see some villains here in a very different order than how the seasons they came from were ranked. Some of their seasons didn't even make the top 10 at all, which goes to show how important a good antagonist is for a story if the best part of the show turned out to be the villains themselves. Coming in at number 10, we have Master Org, Toxica, Jindrax, and Zenaku from Wild Force. And yes, you're going to see groupings of characters in certain slots because for many of these guys, the main baddie just isn't complete without their henchmen. And sometimes the henchmen outshine their own boss. And that's largely what happened here. Master Org was largely your stereotypical take over the world generic bad guy, until you find out he let himself get possessed by an evil entity born out of an intense jealousy toward his lab partner whom he feels stole away his true love, and then proceeded to murder them in cold blood. His 2 former best friends who were the parents of the Wild Force Red Ranger. Now that is dark. Then we have his 2 henchmen, the mostly comedic duo of Toxica and Jindrax, who I feel is the Rita Lord Zed romance done correctly. Despite doing despicable things to please their master, it was clear from the start these 2 genuinely respected and cared for each other, and were doing whatever they could to survive and protect each other, almost to the same level the Rangers would for their teammates, and that instantly made them super interesting to watch. And finally we have Zenaku, an evil entity that the Lunar Wolf Ranger sacrificed himself to steal away centuries ago, and becomes the Hyde to Merrick's Jekyll. Admittedly, the season's plot kinda meandered at first, but once Zenaku appeared and started mopping the floor with the Rangers, and then finding out he was basically the darker half of one of our heroes, the season instantly picked up in quality. It just goes to show how important an interesting, well-written, or entertaining villain can be to a story, because without these guys, Wild Force would have probably been easily forgotten. Number 9, we have Trakina from Lost Galaxy. I pretty much said all that needed to about her already in the season overview, so I'll keep this brief. While earlier episodes gave us Scorpius, it's clear that his daughter Trakina was the true star, and literally becomes the main villain when her father is slain by the Rangers. But what I find most interesting about her is how she starts off as an ineffective, spoiled brat, but once her dad dies, the kid gloves come off, and she literally puts herself through grueling training to make herself stronger. What started as a watered-down Astronema knockoff slowly but surely turned into a fully fleshed-out character of her own. Number 8, the Void Knight, Void King, and Void Queen from Dino Fury. Again, they were already talked about, so I'll keep it short, but basically, I love how these 2 started off as what appeared to be as generic a bad guy as you could get, until you find out their backstory and why they're doing what they're doing, and that they're related to one of the Rangers, and suddenly they became one of the most sympathetic antagonists of the franchise, proving that looks can be deceiving. Number 7, we have Heckle from Dino Charge. And yeah, by extension, there's his other half Snide, and Sledge and his crew were also entertaining, but let's get real here. Once Heckle showed up, he became the true star of the show. He makes an instant splash in his first appearance. He was cunning, conniving, and dare I say it, super charming, which is part of what made him so dangerous. And much like many of the other antagonists featured here, he slowly becomes more sympathetic when his backstory is revealed, and his eventual turn to the side of good is a joy to watch. So you can imagine my excitement when he popped up again in Cosmic Fury. Number 6, it's Gerard/Daishi from Jungle Fury. I'll talk more about him in a moment, but for now, just know that rare is it to find a villain who is actually on his own journey of discovery of sorts and is in training and has just as much to learn as the heroes do, just with a very dark twist on it. Anyone who liked Prince Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender will probably also like him. Number 5, it's the big bad infamous OG warlord himself, Lord Zed from Mighty Morphin. For someone who literally had his flesh exposed, he wasn't the most fleshed out antagonist ever in terms of his motivations or backstory, but I chalked that up largely to just how kid shows were written in the 90s. He's the basic template of which most of this franchise's villains would model after, and I'm probably in the minority when I say I wasn't the biggest fan of his marriage to Rita Repulsa, as that marked his turn into the outright silly and goofy. But when he first appeared, taking over Rita's whole operation and going so far as to invade the Rangers Command Center, and his eventual return to form in Dino and Cosmic Fury, and nearly ending the universe as we know it, that is when Zed is at his scariest. That is the Lord Zed that 7-year-olds everywhere feared back in the day. And while the character has had his highs and lows, ending the franchise with one final standoff with the Rangers' most infamous baddie was the most appropriate, perfect note to go out on. Number 4, Mesagog from Dino Thunder. I've said my piece about him in the season overview, and while I feel there's other villains that were better than him, I can still see why he's a fan favorite antagonist. He's an anthropomorphic dinosaur mad scientist who wants to launch the world into a new prehistoric age, is the father to one of the Rangers, and has a striking design you won't soon forget. Need I say more? Number 3, we have Astronema and Ecliptor from In Space. Yeah, Dark Spectre was technically the actual threat, but come on, these two were the real main villains. They get the lion's share of development, have one of the saddest backstories ever, and for many kids who watched this season as it aired, it was the first time the franchise got a deep, well-written gray area antagonist that made the young audience question what truly made someone good or evil. Is it how you're born or how you're taught? And is someone doomed to be evil forever, or does everyone, despite everything they've done, have a chance at redemption? It's these questions that lead us into the number 2 on the list. Number 2, Rancic from Time Force. As I said in the season overview, Rancic is pretty much what made Time Force as enjoyable as it was. While half the Rangers barely got any development at all, our villains were given one of the most tragic backstories ever, with him being feared and hated over something that wasn't his fault. And as we all know, constant mistreatment can easily darken a person's heart and continue the vicious cycle of hate. And yet, in between hurting people and trying to change history, he still clearly loves his daughter and will do anything for her, even going so far as to let her date one of the Rangers just because he knows that'll make her happy, as hilarious as that sounds. It's that juxtaposition between maniacal but sympathetic supervillain and devoted parent that made him one of the most popular villains in the franchise. And finally, number 1, Venjix from RPM. After an entire list of either funny, sliming yet charming, or sympathetic antagonists, here's the one that's the complete opposite. The one that literally has no soul or emotion whatsoever. Not because they're a robot, but because we've had tons of robots with emotion and personality throughout the years. No, Venjix takes the top spot because they're a computer virus. A cold, calculating, uncaring virus that can and will infect anything and everything mechanical it can get its hands on, wiping out nearly all of humanity, and it will not stop until every last human being on the planet is obliterated or assimilated into its mainframe. There is no negotiating with it, no reasoning with it, virtually no way to stop it or even detect its presence until it's too late. All of the villains that came before or after it may have tried to take over the world or came super close, but Venjix is the answer to the question question of what if the bad guys did win. Truly, Venjix will go down as not just one of the most powerful, most effective, and scariest villains in Power Rangers, but in kids media, period. Moving on to something far lighter, let's talk about my favorite mentor figures. Since the franchise's inception, virtually every Ranger team has had some sort of older parental figure there to guide them or give advice, and as with anyone, some were better than others. So for me personally, here's a few of the greats. Number 10, the big original floating head himself, it's Zordon, the all-seeing space wizard who guided the Rangers through Mighty Morphin Zeo, a little bit of Turbo, and then made the ultimate sacrifice to save the universe and in space. Heck, this dude's so famous, all those seasons I just mentioned are literally called the Zordon era of the franchise by many fans. But as iconic as he is, he's at the bottom mainly because, much like the franchise's earlier days, we don't actually get much backstory on him, and his viewing globes seemed to be used more like an easy device to use when the writers couldn't think of a way out of the plot. Like, sometimes the guy can see everything and other times he can't, and you'd think he would have sent the Rangers to go imprison Rita Repulsa like the second she escaped and not just let her hang out on the moon, but then we wouldn't have a plot now, would we? But despite all that, the moments where he's a caring and wise figure are good, and I appreciated that our heroes becoming Rangers was largely by choice, and when Jason and the gang all eventually quit and moved on with their lives, Zordon made no attempt to stop them and was in fact happy for them. He cared about the mission for sure, but he always remembered his charges were people who deserved to have lives outside of being superheroes, something a lot of adult media tends to forget. He was a great starting model for all the mentors to come, ones that would be even more humanized and fleshed out in terms of writing, as we've seen and are about to see, but I still gotta give props to the talking head that started it all. Number 9, Kendall Morgan from Dino Charge. Keeper may have seemed like the Yoda type, seemingly super powerful and spouting platitudes to the Rangers when they needed it, but let's face it, Kendall was the real mentor of this team, always planning and strategizing, keeping everyone in order, constantly creating new gadgets until she eventually became a Ranger herself. But best of all, she was a leader who also had some growing to do, learning to trust that her young charges could handle themselves and that they were far smarter than she initially thought. Most notably how she starts off treating Shelby like crap but eventually apologizes and see how capable she actually is, until eventually the two become best friends. It goes to show that even teachers have much to learn from their students. And speaking of teachers, Number 8, Udana from Mystic Force, the season that definitely leaned into the Harry Potter craze that was going on at the time with its primary focus on magic, fairy tales, and high fantasy. I think what made her so interesting to me was that she was one of the few mentor figures who was an actual parent, so she constantly had this motherly presence and looked out for the team like she would her own kids, always encouraging them, warning them of danger, and teaching them new spells. Even more awesome, she begins the season as a White Ranger, and though her Ranger powers get stolen away early on, she doesn't let this huge setback stop her. Despite losing her husband, her son, and her entire home, she never gives up hope that they can all someday be found or restored, and her never-wavering faith ultimately pays off. And as long as we're still talking about this season, number 7, we have Daggeron, aka the Solaris Knight, also from Mystic Force. Is it cheating to have two characters from the same season on this list? I don't know, but I liked him too much. I couldn't not include him. Basically copy-paste everything I said about Udana, but in the fatherly way, and you got Daggeron. He's everything that a great and noble knight should be, with the added bonus of actually teaching our heroes how to properly fight, including setting Chip on the path to becoming a knight himself. It makes me wish we had a few more crossovers because he, Merrick, and Sir Ivan would get along like a house on fire. Number 6, Mechanic from Ninja Steel. You know you were the best aspect of your respective season when the writers constantly find a way to have you reappear for crossovers, but not the actual Rangers themselves. Not to say Ninja Steel was terrible or anything, it was fine enough, but that's all it really was. Just fine, if a bit forgettable. But the one shining exception was its mentor figure, a positive, excitable, shape-shifting alien who was also a mechanical genius and gave advice whenever the Rangers needed it, in that easygoing way, the way your fun-loving uncle would if you asked him something, or if he caught you doing something potentially stupid and tried to warn you before you wound up hurting yourself. And without any major spoilers, when we find out the sad and dark backstory behind how he ended up on the main villain's spaceship at the beginning of the season, well, let's just say it takes someone with incredible willpower to be able to keep smiling after everything he's gone through. Number 5, Solon from Dino Fury. If Udana was the mom, Daggeron the dad, and Mick the uncle, then Solon is your doting auntie or grandma. The one who always knows just the right thing to say, can pretty much fix anything, and always finds time to fix your favorite snack and make sure everyone's taking care of themselves in between saving the world. Oh, and she's a walking, talking cyborg dinosaur. How cool is that? Number 4, it's the legendary ranger himself, Tommy Oliver, specifically his role in Dino Thunder, as by that time he had literally become a teacher. And what better mentor for a ranger team than someone who was once a ranger himself? Whenever his 3 charges were struggling or acting out, he always knew what to say or what to do because he himself had been in their shoes, and then eventually put said shoes on again when he became the first mentor character to ranger up and get in on the action. Oh, and he also windmill kicked a T-Rex in the face. If that doesn't get you on a top 10 list, I don't know what will. Number 3, Anubis Doggy Kruger from SPD. Much like Mick and Ninja Steel, here's another season that, while I recognize the good writing and character development for the Rangers, mostly Jack and Sky, I didn't find them to be particularly likable, save for Bridge, and the villains were kinda lacking too. So for me, the big standout character was its mentor, a talking alien dog who could be stern and tough, but fair. He took crap from no one, was excellent at recognizing the strengths and weaknesses and those he gave orders to, and was always willing to give second chances to people he saw potential in or knew were genuinely sorry and were trying to change for the better. And conversely, when someone had the guts to call him out on his own mistakes, he never shifted blame or made excuses. He'd rightfully apologize and take steps to correct what he'd done, which is miles more than I can say for many of the leaders we have now. He could be a drill sergeant, but never to the point of being unreasonable or unlikable, which can be a hard balancing act, and the writers pulled it off perfectly. Number 2, it's Dr. K from RPM. I've already said my piece about her in the season overview, so I won't repeat myself here, but yeah, she's easily one of the, if not the most tragic character in all of Power Rangers. To have to face down the specter of the annihilation of the human race, with the few survivors counting on you to save them, all while being an abused, neglected, and imprisoned child, to still be able to carry on and do what you must to ensure everyone's survival is beyond incredible. My one and only hang-up with her is that she can be somewhat nasty to the Rangers, especially in the early episodes, though once you find out her backstory and how she grew up, it's easy to understand why she acts the way she does. And by the end of the season, she's forged a new family for herself with the Rangers, getting the happy ending she deserved. And for number 1, we have the man, the myth, the legend. It's RJ from Jungle Fury. I'll have more to say about him in a couple minutes, but for now, all you need to know is that he's a surfer dude who manages a pizza shop, who also happens to be a martial arts master and is easily one of the funniest, wisest, and most approachable teachers you could ever have, proving that outward appearances can be incredibly deceiving. While all the other mentors I've mentioned are incredible, RJ is the one that I think you'd be the closest to finding in real life. If more people had a friend and teacher like RJ, I think the world would be a much kinder place. Next up, just like the magical girl genre, Super Sentai loves its transformation sequences, so let's take a quick look at my favorite morphs from the franchise. Doesn't matter what I personally think of the characters or the quality of the season, we're strictly judging these just on the spectacle of the morph alone.
Power there!
Power water!
Energize! Ha! Unleash the power!
Up next, let's talk about favorite Ranger teams. Again, we're mostly judging these in a vacuum. While the season as a whole may not have been up to par, if the Rangers themselves were likable, that's what's important here. Also, keep in mind, I'm judging these mainly on what I think of the teams as regular people. I'm approaching this with the question of, if these characters were real and I had the chance to spend the day with them, not fight crime or a monster or anything, but just casually hang out with them doing regular stuff, who would I pick? Well, number 10, we have Lost Galaxy. Being able to hang out on a giant space station would be amazing, along with learning how to communicate with the Galactabeast and Maya's Miranoi culture, or doing cool science experiments and researching ancient galaxies with Kai and Kendrix. Number 9, Beast Morphers. This gang of 5 were just so fun all around. I would love to make artwork alongside Ravi and get art tips from him, or go on nature hikes with Zoe and learn all kinds of futuristic science with Nate. And Steel, good god, what wouldn't this guy want to do? He embraces his new human life with such gusto, it's infectious. Number 8, Dino Thunder. Anyone who's got an artist on their team is ace in my book, and Trent being an upcoming comic book artist, sold. Not to mention rock concerts with Kira and late night video game sessions with Ethan. Oh, and Tommy Oliver is their teacher, need I say more? Number 7, Mighty Morphin. Going back to the original for this one, this group always had something going on. I'd love to sit in on martial arts class with Jason and Tommy, or learn how to dance with Zach, do charity events with Trini or Kimberly, and help invent stuff with Billy. And take a ride in his flying car. Seriously, I want that flying car. Why does no one ever talk about or remember that he invented a flying car? Number 6, Dino Fury / Cosmic Fury. Getting to meet aliens and hang out with a talking dinosaur? Check. Eat alien food at Ion's restaurant? Check. See Javi in concert? Check. Go on runs with Izzy? Check. And go on supernatural creature hunts with Amelia? Big check. Number 5, In Space. Pretty much in any opportunity I can get to hang out on a spaceship and visit alien planets, I will take it. This whole team would be nice enough to hang out with, but especially TJ. Just TJ, man. I actually have way more to say about him in just a moment. Number 4, Wild Force. I always loved the idea of a giant floating island in the sky, and being able to spend the day there taking care of the animals just sounds so peaceful. As a bonus, you got Cole there who can actually talk to animals, and Florist Danny to drop all the cool plant facts. Number 3, Jungle Fury. Learning ancient martial arts while also working at a pizza parlor, creating unique pizza creations, and getting free food. Where do I sign up? Number 2, Lightspeed Rescue. Up until the next team I'm about to mention, this was my personal favorite Ranger team. All of these people were just so kind and friendly and got along so well with each other, and seeing as how it was their jobs to save people before becoming Rangers, it makes sense. I feel like they all had this ingrained sense of caring for others more so than any other Ranger group because of the nature of their professions. From rollerblading with Kelsey, to exploring the ocean with Chad, to watching one of Joel's air shows, I would leap at the chance to befriend these guys. But there's one team that managed to beat them out. And finally, number 1, Dino Charge. If you heard all my gushing of the season in the overview, then this should come as no surprise. No Ranger team instantly captured my heart as much as this one. In the words that Coda used many times, this is the group that I felt the most like a family to me. Being able to work at a museum, go on archaeological digs, work in a nice cafe, and get to hang out with a royal prince, and a real caveman, and a real medieval knight, and learn all about the time periods they came from, I would give anything for this. Seriously, when I finished this series, this was the only time I was really sad to see a season end. I was truly going to miss these people and wish they would have gotten just one more season so I could spend more time with them. That's how cool they are to me. And now, as long as we're on the subject of the Rangers, let's break things down a little further and feature my favorite individual Rangers by color. This was easily the trickiest category to break down, as there's tons of characters that wore multiple colors depending on if they got a power-up or bled into another season or series. And don't get me started on all the miscellaneous colors that were only used a handful of times, mostly for 6th Rangers, so I know this ain't gonna be super clean cut, so just bear with me here. For our red leaders, we actually got a tie between TJ from Turbo and Carter from Lightspeed Rescue. Both of these guys are so good, I just couldn't vote one over the other, so screw it, they both get the top spot. Carter was already out saving people as a fireman, so it's no wonder he got picked to be a ranger. He's always thinking about others and how best to take care of his team, nearly sacrificed himself to seal away a horde of demons, and when faced with his first monster of the week in the pilot episode, while everyone else was doing fancy kung fu moves, his first instinct was to jump in his car and run the sucker over. In that moment, I knew I was gonna like this guy. As for TJ, this man seriously needs more respect. I think because he came in halfway through Turbo, which isn't a generally well-liked season, and then shifted to being the Blue Ranger and in space, he doesn't get talked about as much, and as such doesn't get the credit he deserves for being such a great person and good leader. He's so friendly and welcoming to everyone, and I swear this guy could bring about world peace with that trademark smile and handshake he always does when meeting new people. He rallied the team together and never gave up on saving Zordon, even while utterly defeated and powerless after the command center was blown to bits, refusing to abandon Alpha 6 in there. He instantly drops everything to save someone in danger prior to getting superpowers, and not only is he the first Black-Red Ranger, but I'd argue that Turbo got better once Tommy and the original gang left and TJ's team came in. No offense to Tommy or the rest of the Mighty Morphin and Zeo cast, but I think after spending so much time with these same people, it was long overdue for some new characters to take over. Turbo was clearly meant for TJ and his friends, not Tommy's. And speaking of Tommy, that's one other thing. TJ is the one who saved him from falling into a bottomless pit. Everyone goes on and on about Tommy Oliver, but if it wasn't for TJ, he'd be dead. For our boy in blue, it's the one who was my fave from the very beginning, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Billy from Mighty Morphin. Sorry Dakota from Dino Charge, you were a very, very close second, but the journey Mr. Cranston here went on was a wild one to say the least. If you've watched my channel for a while, you may know I'm typically a sucker for the book-smart, brainy characters, and booting up episode 1, I knew from the start that Billy was gonna be my guy. He's sweet and kind, a child prodigy, but without being smug about it, invented a countless amount of gadgets, and went to space and met aliens long before anyone else on Earth did, and I loved his triumphant return in Cosmic Fury. He is out here running a tech company and also galaxy hopping, still saving the world as the Blue Ranger when needed. I think it can be argued that he's the longest serving Ranger, gaining a slight edge on Tommy, I think, or if nothing else, he's equals with him. It's just so cool to remember that Billy started out as the stereotypical nerd who was constantly picked on and beat up and struggled to fight even one putty, and now he's a kick-ass leader charging up to Lord Zed with zero fear, killing a resurrected Rita Repulsa, and is known for his heroic deeds throughout the galaxies. My boy did so much growing. Oh, and he invented a flying car in his garage when he was a teenager. I want that flying car so bad. Time for Pretty in Pink, we have Amelia from Dino Fury, and by extension Cosmic Fury. From the moment she rolled up on her moped covered in alien stickers, I knew she was going to be my girl for the season, and eventually became my pink for all time. Though she came off as your stereotypical tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist at first, she very quickly proved that she was way smarter, observant, caring, and tactical than she led on. Her ongoing quest to seek the truth in any story, her determination, and not caring if anyone found her weird was super admirable. And when those qualities netted her the promotion to Red Ranger in Cosmic Fury, it was earned. Too much pink energy may be dangerous, but she rocked it so hard. For our shiny yellow, the award goes to Lily from Jungle Fury. She had the perfect balance of being kick-ass, strong, and driven, but also super sweet and bubbly. She's the glue that held her team together, is arguably the most mature, and keeps Casey and Theo in line when they butt heads, always puts forth an effort to make sure her team is alright both physically and mentally, and is always willing to listen to other people's problems and try to help them. Most notably when she manages to encourage an old martial arts master to get back back on his feet again, or when she unknowingly gives life advice to one of the main villains, and it winds up paying off when said villain takes her advice and eventually defects to the good guys. She's a genuinely nice person with a kindness that has no strings attached, proving that badassery doesn't need to be edgy. Back in black, we have Dylan from RPM. I knew I was gonna like this guy when, in his introductory scene, he's driving around in the wastelands, a place where there's next to no food, water, or other resources, and yet he stops to nourish a tiny flower with the last of the precious water he has on him. And then the rest of the episode and into the next one is him befriending Ziggy, an overly excitable ex-mob henchman that anyone else would have cast aside, but Dylan remains sympathetic to him, clearly sees something in Ziggy that no one else does. That's subtle and good character building. He comes off as a tough guy, but through his actions all throughout RPM, it's clear he does deeply care about people, and his determination in following his gut instincts almost always pays off. It's how he and Ziggy became Rangers, it's how he rescues his long-lost sister, and even though one time he led the whole team into a trap, it still worked out in the end, because if they hadn't gone out into the waste, they would have never found the gold and silver Rangers. He's a great example of how looks can deceive and that heroes can come from unexpected places. For the wearing of the green, the top spot goes to Izzy from Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury. Apologies to Bridge from SPD, you were a very close second. What's interesting is that she and her brothers start off as just someone Zato had to interview for his potential new job at Buzz Blast, and you'd think they're just going to be one-off victims of the week, and then surprise, surprise, both her and her brother turn out to be the newest Rangers. From the moment we meet her, she's instantly became one of the best written Rangers on her team in terms of dialogue. She's a dedicated athlete, is playfully snarky, takes crap from no one, loves her family and will do anything to protect them, is willing to put in the work to learn something new, and showed zero hesitation in putting her personal dreams on hold to uphold her responsibilities as a Ranger. And most notably, she has one of the most well-written and well-paced romances with her girlfriend Fern, and to any of you who have a problem with that, I say,
leave any bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge.
finally, the most awkward of all, we have those oddball colors that only made a few appearances here and there. I was originally going to give gold its own category until I realized that all the Gold Rangers and most of the miscellaneous colors were all 6th Rangers, so screw it, we'll just call this the 6th Ranger category. And for those not in the know, a 6th Ranger refers to an extra team member who is introduced way later in the story separate from the main team. Since this category is so scattered as is and involves a bunch of colors, I'm just going to quickly fire off the ones that stood out to me the most. There's Merrick, the Wild Force Lunar Wolf Ranger. This franchise had plenty of knights in shining armor, but he was the first and willingly sacrificed himself to protect his people, then wrestled with the manifestation of his dark side for much of the show. Wild Force as a whole got way more interesting once he showed up. Oh, and his finishing attack is shooting exploding billiard balls at his opponents. Why? Because shut up. Then there's our other wolf-themed ranger, RJ from Jungle Fury. I gushed about him already and will continue to do so. He's an awesome mentor on top of being the franchise's first purple ranger, and it wouldn't be until Dino Charge that he finally gained some company in that aspect. Then we have Antonio, the Gold Ranger from Samurai, and quite frankly, he was the single saving grace of Samurai, the one thing that made that season bearable. He's arguably the best actor and shows the most emotion, is super likable, legit funny, and it's revealed that he was basically next door neighbors with the future Red Ranger, and when he found out about Jaden's destiny as a warrior, my man Antonio was like, oh, that's cool, I'm gonna be a superhero too. And then he goes out and actually becomes the GOAT. He trained all on his own, actually built his own morpher, and basically became a ranger through sheer force of will, proving you didn't have to have inherited powers or pre-fated destiny to be a hero. If Samurai leaned more into that story angle, it would have made for a far better season. Then we have our other gold and our other knight in shining armor, Sir Ivan from Dino Charge. It was great having another time-displaced character besides Coda, and the bond those two shared over their similar circumstances was nothing short of sweet. He's such a pure-hearted, upstanding gentleman who takes joy in aiding anyone who asks for his help. His fish-out-of-water moments are funny, and he learns so much about what the future has to offer over the course of the season, and it's fun going on that journey with him. And finally, we can't have a Best Ranger highlight without the top dog himself, Tommy Oliver, the OG 6th Ranger of which all other 6th Rangers owe their existence to. Do I even need to give this guy an introduction? He made the biggest, most shocking splash when he arrived on the scene back in Mighty Morphin, originally as an antagonist but quickly turned hero, and has been one of the longest-serving Rangers ever since, starting in green, then white, then red for Zeo and Turbo, then black in Dino Thunder. He's had multiple jobs, from martial arts instructor to race car driver to scientist and archaeologist. He's a loving father, he's a teacher and a mentor, he's a legend for a reason. Rest in peace to Jason David Frank. You left us far too soon. And finally, I want to list off my 10 favorite theme songs. Like pretty much everything else in these categories, it doesn't matter how good or bad the season was, we're just judging the songs on their own.
already have the energy from your pink coin. Too much pink energy is dangerous.
And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, my #1 favorite season of Power Rangers is Jungle Fury. I mean, come on. I gave special highlights to the villain, the mentor, and one of the Rangers from this season already. I'd like to think at least some of you saw this coming, but if not, well, surprise, it's Jungle Fury. As I said earlier, the final 5 were super tough to rank, and the top 3 are especially interchangeable on the awesome scale depending on your taste or what you're in the mood for, but ultimately there's a reason this one beat out all the others. For over 10,000 years, a spirit of pure evil known as Daishi has been locked away and safely guarded by the Order of the Claw, a secretive kung fu clan. The Order selects their top 3 members, Gerard, Theo, and Lily, to become the new guardians of Daishi, but Gerard's arrogant and bullying nature leads to him being excluded, and a rookie named Casey is chosen instead. Yeah, I share a name with a Red Ranger. That's not the reason I picked this season, that's just a sweet bonus. Anyway, during the initiation ceremony, Gerard attacks Master Mao, inadvertently breaking the vessel containing Daishi's essence as he does so. The free Daishi kills Master Mao, then takes over Gerard's body. Thus, our 3 new guardians have to travel to the city of Ocean Bluff to seek their new master, who turns out to be a man named Robert James, aka RJ, chef and owner of Jungle Karma Pizza. Soon after, he grants our heroes the powers and abilities of the Jungle Fury Rangers. Now, along with the eventual help of Dominic, the White Rhino Ranger, the US exclusive Spirit Rangers, and Fran, a trusted employee who helps guard the base and run the pizza shop while the Rangers are gone, our martial arts students in training are Earth's only hope to stop Daishi and his army of undead warriors from attempting to take over the world and allow animals to rule over humans. So let's see, a bunch of color-coded teenagers studying martial arts under the tutelage of a sensei with his own interesting backstory who occasionally deal with supernatural forces but live in the city, eat tons of pizza, and are fighting against an evil martial artist and his army of ninjas, and yeah, it's TMNT. This is totally Power Rangers version of TMNT. Like, if you're a Ninja Turtles fan, then Jungle Fury is like the spiritual cousin to it. No joke. But aside, this whole season is just pure unadulterated fun. The dialogue, the character relationships, the lessons of the day, the idea of having your superhero headquarters in the attic loft of an unassuming pizza parlor, this whole setup is every 10-year-old's dream come true. But unlike other comedic-centered seasons like Turbo or Ninja Storm, what puts this season above those is that it strikes the perfect balance of knowing when to be silly and when to be serious. The general atmosphere is fairly lighthearted and chill, but our team always gets that reminder that there is a looming threat out there that they have to constantly train and prepare for. And train they do. Practically every episode shows the gang working out or studying, constantly testing one another and learning new things, an element that many other seasons are lax in showing, with it being assumed that the characters just magically gain skills and know what to do when they link to the morphin grid. Not here though. The message is clear. If you want to master something, you gotta work for it, and we slowly see the progression in the team's skills, making it extra satisfying when they finally earn a new Zord or weapon, and not just having it handed to them out of nowhere. But the true driving force of this season is with its characterization, both for the heroes and villains. Gerard may not be one of the franchise's most complex villains. He's basically lashing out in a jealous rage over not being his teacher's favorite, with Daishi feeding off that anger and fueling the fire. But I do find it very interesting that even the villain himself is also a student, and we see him training under various evil entities in an effort to better his skills and get stronger. He's like Drakina from Lost Galaxy in that sense, although this season does it a bit better, I think, because we get tons of intrigue and scheming and backstabbing from the various bad guys that are vying to usurp Daishi or control him. Most compelling is Daishi's main henchwoman Camille, who will do anything to earn his respect and his romantic affection, a pursuit that just may help free both of them from the evil grip they're trapped in. And of course we have our Rangers, who are one of the most well-developed teams in terms of characterization. Dominic Dominic admittedly gets the least amount of focus. I feel he came into a story a little late and abrupt, but he's still a very likable free spirit who helps bookish Fran open up and be more adventurous. Fran is easily one of the best side characters in the franchise, working her butt off to run the pizza parlor and help the team however she can. It is a crime this girl was never made a ranger. She really should have. I mean, we got the American exclusive Spirit Rangers, why not her? Which, speaking of them, they're a trio of martial arts masters our heroes train under over the course of the show, and even they're made to be cool and interesting in the few appearances they get. Lily also remains fairly static in her personality, but that's not a bad thing. I already gushed about her in my favorite Ranger section of how much positivity and insightfulness she brings to the team. She has a previous shared history with her friend Theo, who can be pretty intense and serious and starts off with a general fear of failure, but it's clear he cares deeply about his duties and wants to do the best job he can, and his growing friendship with his teammates help him to gradually loosen up. Casey by far sees the most development, beginning off as a simple towel boy who ain't looking for trouble, but also won't stand idly by when someone's getting hurt, which is what nets him the Guardian job. And when he's unexpectedly thrust into the role of a Ranger, he has to find the inner strength to catch up to his teammates in terms of skill and stand up for himself and his beliefs, to the point that by the end of the show, Casey's the one standing firm in the notion that Gerard can be reformed when everyone else has given him up as a lost cause. And then there's the man, the myth, the maybe slightly high pizza slinger RJ, with his little hand jives and lines like, "Tomorrow, today will be yesterday. I always love to leave my opponents with a confusing thought." How can you not love him? I mentioned it earlier, but he's easily the best mentor figure in the entire franchise, bar none. He clearly went to the Mr. Miyagi school of, when the student has a question, make them train or do specific chores and eventually they'll figure out the problem on their own. He's the perfect example of not judging a book by its cover, coming off as a goofy pizza chef, only to reveal how wise and skilled he actually is, with one of the Spirit Rangers being his own father, whom he has a strained relationship with that eventually gets worked out. And when it does, he makes franchise history and becomes the first Purple Ranger. Remember when I said this was like TMNT? RJ is basically an older, more mature Michelangelo who eventually became a sensei. But ultimately what landed this all the way at #1 for me is that while other seasons had great elements to them, be it the villain, the Rangers, or the plot, this is the one that has something great about every element and brings it all together. It doesn't attach itself to any previous continuity, it's wacky but knows when to have actual stakes, it has serious lessons to impart but knows to not take itself too seriously. From likable heroes and interesting villains who nearly all get satisfying arcs, a great mentor, good side characters who aren't annoying, a solid plot that develops at a steady pace and never drags, it's all around awesome. Dino Charge may have had my favorite Ranger team, but it's admittedly a tiny bit overflowing with characters, and RPM may have the best writing, but it's very dark and so unlike anything that came before it or since. So if a new person came up to me and was like, "I want to try out Power Rangers, but I don't know where to start. I don't feel like researching any continuity, and I'm only willing to commit my time and energy to one season right now. What have you got for me?" This is the one I point them to, for all the reasons I just said. It's one of the best representations of the best qualities that made Power Rangers so beloved for over 30 years, and that's why it's my pick for my favorite season. Jungle Beast, Spirit Unleashed. Phew, well that was certainly a journey and a half. Thank you all for sticking with me for this recap of a year-long adventure I went on, a journey that I hope all of you will take someday. To anyone out there who thinks Power Rangers is that corny superhero show from the 90s and thinks that's all the franchise is, I really hope you'll reconsider and give it another chance like I did, as it did mature and grow and change over time. Pick out whichever one of these seasons looks the most appealing to you and dive right in. You won't be disappointed. I'm Cartoon12 and I hope you enjoyed the countdown. I'll have more top 10 lists, reactions, and other videos soon, and if you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and I'll see you all next time. May the power protect you all.
The evil pizzas were no match for a simple stoplight.